So I'm going to take something that says it's DC here, and it says 9 volt DC. Now the first thing you probably need to know about power, without going into any specific jargon, is basically to be able to tell what's AC and what's DC. So in this instance we want to find DC. When you've got something like this, the way to just test how much DC you have is to put any of the probes from a multimeter, and this is just a very simple multimeter and a very cheap one that can read DC, AC and a few other things like continuity. So I'm just going to put any of the probes in the center of this lead, and we're reading 9 volts, but if you can see, it says minus 9 volts. Now if I do this the other way round with the black at the center, you'll see it now reads just 9, so in other words plus 9. And look at what's at the center is the black, and the black's the negative. So this is what you call pin negative, and this is the standard kind of, I mean, for musicians the majority of pedals will be pin negative, but you do need to know the difference between positive and negative. So when you're looking for something that's pin positive, and this clearly isn't pin positive, I've just pulled in some various DC leads, and we're going to see if we can find a pin positive, and we're going to see if we can find pin positive DC. Just plug into this one. That says negative 12, so that's no good. Plug into this one. Now that one just says 12, so that is 12, and you can see the V there, 12 volts, 12.39 volts. So if you are looking for a power supply that's DC and 12 volts, that one would be it. So I'm going to get rid of that one. You know, that's 12 volts. Let's carry on. Let's look at this one. And that reading's nearly 0. If you get any reading that says 0.9, I think that when you switch this to AC, when you do this, you're now getting a normal reading, 15. So this is AC 15 volt. I'll do it the other way around. That's reading 15.48. So AC is something that the pin doesn't really make any difference because it's alternating between the two. That's another way of telling if the number doesn't go positive negative, you know it's AC. Let's just try this one. Let's see what happens on this one. I've just pulled some power supplies at random. That's saying 19, and I'm still on AC, so that is still an AC power supply. Now if I go and try this at DC and try and take a reading, see the reading is near 0, 001.3, and it's actually minus. So we know that that is definitely not DC because it's near 0, and the way to double check that is to go to AC and see if you could get a voltage. So we're reading 19 volts on that one. Try this one. Going in pin negative on this. So I'm still on AC. I'm getting a reading, fluctuating reading. Let's try it on DC if we get a stable reading. So it's DC. That one's 18 volt. And I've chosen pin negative. So we know that that's pin negative 18 volt. If you do it the other way around, with the positive at the centre, we're getting a reading of -18. So if you're just looking for a power supply to fit your device, that's a very easy way of doing it, and it's a very surefire way of doing it. If you have a pedal board, loads of cables showing at the rear and you don't know what's what, before you plug anything in, it's always best to check whether it's DC, AC, pin negative, pin positive. So I've tried not to use too much jargon, but that's kind of one way of doing it. Here's a standard Boss pedal. Most of them have a label. It says DC 9 volts. That's the main thing to observe, and don't really worry about the rest of the information apart from this little diagram here. And you can see, like in the middle between the plus and the minus, the positive and the negative, there's like a semicircle, and the semicircle's got an opening and it's pointing towards the minus sign. So in other words, it's pin minus. So this power supply needs a negative, pin negative power supply, and it says there 9 volt DC. So that's basically, to read any diagram, I'm always being asked this question by people who are just fearful of plugging in the wrong thing, but we can see clearly that the plus is going to the outer casing, whereas the minus is going to the inner part. And so that really is a diagram of your regular DC adapter that plugs into here. So let's put that into practice. 9 volt DC, pin negative. And as I said, the easiest way of doing this is when you've got a power supply that's actually telling you what it is. It's saying 9 volt DC, but it's not telling you whether it's pin positive or pin negative. If this was pin positive, you don't want to be plugging it into this. So the way to test this is you take your black negative, put it to the pin, take the red, and we're going to get a DC reading, and it should just read 9. And it says DC 08.99V. In other words, it's 8.99 volts. So we know that that is pin negative, 9 volt, and that's exactly what it says on the diagram. And I know that we can plug that in and we know it's on. If you take a pedal like this, it's telling us 12 volt DC, and you can read from the diagram, from the dot at the center, the center is going to the positive. The casing is going to the negative. So in this instance, we need to plug the red into the center, black to the outer, and we need to be able to see 12 volts. Let's see. Let's go for our random cables that are over here. Hopefully they're in shot, yes. Okay, so we know that one's 9 volt DC, but it's this one's pin negative, so we can discard that. Let's take this, and we're looking for pin positive. So we need to get a positive reading on DC. If it says something like near 0, so that one is DC, but we're getting a negative reading, so that is incorrect. We don't need that one. Okay, let's try this one. That's saying minus 18. Okay, so that's no good. It's the wrong number. Let's plug this one in. And we're getting a near zero number, so we pretty much know that that's AC. Let's try this one. And that one is saying 12.38 volts. So we know that that's a 12 volt DC. We know it's not AC. We know it's quite a steady amount of power, and that is pin positive. I can tell you with 100% certainty that that one will plug in to this. And we're working. That's how I do all of my pedals. I use a multimeter, and the multimeter gives me the information. But you have to be absolutely clear what you're doing. But that's with the minimum amount of theory and the rest of it. You have to be able to diagnose what a pedal requires if it tells you actually on the pedal. It doesn't give you any more information than that other than 12 volt DC pin positive on that pedal. Imagine if you get to a gig and you've got 2 or 3 power supplies that have come out of their sockets. One's an 18, one's a 9, one's a 12 volt. Then if they're all coming out of the back of something and there's a whole rat's nest of wiring at the back and you can't trace it through to the source, then you use your multimeter and that will just tell you in seconds. It's a real time saver. I can't recommend it enough for musicians. This is a Moore pedal, and it's telling us DC in, and on the back it's telling us 9 volt, pin negative. So that's really all the information we need. And so we knew that these, coming from this, we know it's 9 volt. If we want to double check, go to our multimeter, make sure it's pin negative, so we put the black into the center, and we're getting a perfect reading of 9 volts. So we know that that goes into this pedal. If the pedal doesn't light, simply plug a jack. And then let's take this Donna pedal, very common pedal, and let's see if we can get a reading on it from this. So it's saying DC in and really small on the pin, but it is saying pin negative. Really difficult to see. So if you're really unsure, take a photo of it on your phone. So we know that this is pin negative, 9 volts. Yep, so that's good. That'll plug in there. So those work. This one is a 12 volt pedal, but it will run on what's called an ACA adapter, which is actually 12 volt. So here's a power supply. It's a Palmer power supply, and this one's got multiple outputs. It needs, on the input, it needs a 12 volt DC, and it provides 9 volts for these ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 9 volt, all pin negative, and then it's got 2 switchable voltages, and this one means 9 volts, 12 volts, 18 volts. and then when you look at the back, that's how you use the toggle, and then you can just switch it between 9, 12. So if I set the A to 12 volts, everything coming out of this is pin negative. So what I'm going to do is plug it into our problematic DM2, and I'm going to use and if you remember, I need 12 volt DC 2000 milliamp, which I'm pretty sure is this one. I'm just going to check. DC, pin negative, yes, 12.47. Okay, so that's good to plug into here. And we've got a confirmation light. Okay, so now what we can do is try some of our leads, and I'm going to try and see if I can plug into. Now I set A as 12 volt, and this is that quirky pedal that needs 12 volt. In fact, let's just test it before we do it. So we've got a light there telling us yes, it's working. A is set to 12 volt. Everything coming out of here is pin negative, so black to the center, red to the outer casing, and we've got a reading of 12.3 volts. And we've got a light. So it wants 12 volts no matter what. Any of the others will work on 9 volts. Even these serial cables, you can just plug them in, 9 volt. Pretty sure that that's going to read 9 volts. Pin negative. So this one needs 9 volt, pin negative DC. That can be safely plugged in and it works. There you go. So it's all using your practice knowledge, and I would practice on the simplest of pedals. If you're not that familiar and you use effects pedals and you're used to 9 volt type pin negative effects pedals, I would practice like that all the time and really get used to it with a multimeter. So if this video has helped you, then why not subscribe? And you know the saying, those that can, do. And I should leave out the other bit that says, those that can't talk about it. And why not check out some of our other videos? And there are 2 here to check out for you now. And remember, don't just watch, play, and make the commitment to becoming a better guitarist by subscribing to the channel. All the best. Hasta luego.